Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of Advanced Bass Fishing, and really appreciate you guys joining me for today's video because we're going to be talking about what causes bass to get spooky or finicky or hard to catch. Now there's a lot of different things that do this. It's not just one thing, so sort of want to give you a good overview of some things that actually cause this and maybe some things that you can and can't do as far as when they get spooky. So we're going to get into that in today's video. Also, guys, just a quick invitation. Here it is, first part of January. We're filming this. Fishing season's just around the corner. A couple months, we're going to be into the spring season. Just like to invite everybody, if you're looking to stock up on some of your fishing tackle, to please consider using my tackle warehouse link I put in every video description. If you guys go into the description of this video, use and bookmark that link for your tackle purchases. It's a really good way to support advanced bass fishing here, as we get a small percentage of a commission on anything you buy. So I really appreciate that, and big thank you from me and my family there. Okay, what makes bass spooky? Lots of things make bass spooky. So I sort of want to go through the list, what it is from my experience, and sort of give you guys sort of a broad overview what that is and what you can and can't do. So, sorry about that, guys. So got this sinus infection. I'm taking antibiotics for. I'm still been coughing a lot with it. But anyway, here are some things that you can sort of expect when it comes to spooky bass before we get into what causes it. Now, I want to talk a little bit about what happens when a bass gets spooky, as terms of if you can catch them or not. Some bass, when they get spooky and they get finicky, you can't catch them. They're literally impossible to catch. And others, depending upon the depth that they're using and the level of skittishness they have, you can actually still sometimes catch them. Now, let's talk about one of the extremities of this. Probably the most blatant example of a skittish, spooky bass. If you guys may or may not have witnessed this in your own fishing, but sometimes you can see a bass swimming in clear water, especially like in the springtime of the year. And so when you see the bass swimming along the bank there, sometimes you can cast over there, and as soon as your lure hits the water, they dart off 100 miles an hour. They're just like terrified of something hitting the water. And then other times, you'll see a bass cruising in there, and you throw over there, and as soon as your lure hits the water, they gobble it up. They go right to it and eat it. So it's like, what is it that determines that? And I've seen everything in between. I've seen sometimes where you throw your lure in there and the bass will just dart away as fast as they can. I've seen other times they just swim away slow, like they completely ignore it. I see other times where they'll come over, it'll get their attention, and then they swim away. Sometimes they come over and look at it a little bit and then lose interest, and then sometimes they eat it. A lot of different moods and personalities with that. So you don't really know in terms of when you are around spooky bass, you don't really know the level of spookiness they have until you actually fish for them. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what causes that. In my opinion, the number one thing that causes bass to be spooky is fishing pressure. Not just fishing pressure, but noise levels on the lake, the decibel levels. When you're out on the lake on a weekend and you've got jet skis and ski boats and bass boats running around, and a lot of noise in the water, that turns fish off. That makes them skittish, that makes them spooky, that makes them very aware. And in correlation with that, you'll have things like, different type of weather patterns. Normally, if you have a condition where you have a really bright, high light intensity bluebird day, the fish get spooky, a little bit more wary. Sometimes if the water levels are dropping fast, they'll get spooky. Sometimes if the water is really clear, they get spooky. Sometimes, if there's not much wind, they're spooky. There's a lot of things that determine that. But the two variables more than anything else are that fishing pressure and the wind or the frontal passages or some type of weather pattern that makes them do that. So the main thing is like, what can you do to combat that? Different levels of spookiness. And the more public water that you fish, a lot of times the more spooky the fish are going to be in as well. There's a big difference between going to like a farm pond that doesn't get hardly any freshen pressure, and then you go to a public, like a municipal lake that's in town. It's just like the way the fish behave, or it's just like night and day. So here's some things that you can do to catch those spooky bass. Number one, you're going to have to downsize your presentation. You're not going to catch very many spooky bass on large lures whatsoever. They just will not bite them. So first thing you have to do is really go to a finesse profile lure. So your Ned rigs are going to be some of the best baits, a little shaky head, a little drop shot, something that you can work slow on the bottom. Some type of a small plastic worm is going to be really, really good. I would probably say the number one thing is going to be either a Ned rig or like a 4-inch long shaky head, or even a little 3-inch piece of plastic worm on a jig head. Something small, diminutive, something you can fish on the bottom really slow. These are really good lures for catching finicky, wary bass because they don't have to chase very much. They can stay tucked down on the bottom, they can stay close to cover, and it doesn't expend a lot of energy or effort for them to try to catch something small like that. So that's the best thing that you can do with it. The next thing that you can do is make long casts. This is one of the deals that's really, really important. Now, you're going to find also that the level of spookiness or skittishness is directly related to the water clarity a lot of times. In general, the cleaner that water is and the less wind that you have, the more spooky that those fish are going to be, and the dirtier the water, the less spooky those fish are going to be. They're not near spooky in dirty water because that dirty water offers them some level of comfort and protection. So if you're in a cleaner water environment, like with the water visibility over 3 feet, make sure that you make long presentations, long casts. So if you're fishing a point or something, try to cast that Ned rig as far as you can out there. If you're pitching and flipping around boat docks or around shallow cover, try to make long pitches and flips. Just keep your boat and your presence as far away from those fish as you can possibly get. That makes a big, big difference with that. Another thing with that is pay close attention to the angle of the sun. You don't ever want your shadow to be cast on the fish. So if you're fishing down a stretch of bank, make sure that you position your boat where the sun is facing you. You don't want the sun behind you to throw off a shadow in front of you. Bass will definitely get spookier if they see a shadow in the water and some type of movement. That's a big deal. The next is just try to stay off of that trolling motor. It's like if you're on the trolling motor, try to glide in with the wind as much as possible. Keep the trolling motor speed really, really low. Don't do a lot of stopping and starting. Try to stay on it at a very low speed. Just try to be stealthy and quiet. And the combination of that, of using small lures, making long casts, being quiet, that's going to help you catch those spooky ones. But sometimes, guys, one of the things you have to just realize, sometimes bass are just in a negative feeding mode, and there's nothing that you can do to get them to bite. I mean, I have seen it over and over in my fishing. Sometimes you cannot make a fish bite. And if you get into that type of area, try to find a different part of the lake or fish a different lure or fish a different water depth is going to help out. So anyway, that's just a few broad overviews there. Hope it helps you guys out, and we'll talk later.